The first time I saw him, the world outside the hangar seemed to disappear. The smell of jet fuel still hung in the air, but all I could focus on was his eyes, deep, sharp, and carrying the kind of confidence that came from surviving the skies. And those eyes were locked on me. It wasn't supposed to be like this. I was here for my research, to finalize my thesis on adaptive flight simulation for the Academy's training program. I wasn't a cadet. I wasn't part of their world of physical trials, pre-dawn drills, and battle formations. I was an Omega, quiet, analytical, and much more comfortable behind a computer screen than inside a cockpit. But when Captain Adrian Blake walked toward me that day, I realized the safe little world I had built for myself was about to crack wide open. "Elliot Mason," he said, my name rolling off his tongue like he'd been practicing it. "I've read your work. Impressive." I almost laughed. A decorated Alpha fighter pilot, one of the Academy's best, reading my simulation research? Impossible. But there was no trace of mockery in his voice. Over the next few weeks, Adrian found reasons to linger in the lab whenever I was there. At first, it was under the guise of helping test the new sim. But he never just sat at the control to watch me type, ask about my algorithms, lean a little too close when pointing at the screen. And I let him. I told myself it was harmless. He was an alpha, someone whose career and life were leagues above mine. But there was a gentleness in him that clashed with his public image, a quiet, patient way of listening to me ramble about code, as though my words mattered. Then came the storm. The Academy announced an advanced training exercise, live combat simulation with high-risk maneuvers. It was supposed to be controlled, safe. My software would feed the pilots real-time adaptive scenarios. But during the first run, a glitch in the system caused an unexpected failure sequence. One of the jets spiraled dangerously out of control. Adrian was in the air. I was in the control room, watching his aircraft's telemetry spike into chaos. My chest tightened, every instinct screaming that this was my fault. I was seconds away from calling an emergency shutdown when his voice came over the comms, calm and steady. "Mason, don't panic. Just talk me through it." The way he said my name was grounding, steadying. I forced my brain to focus, barking out rapid calculations, override sequences, anything to buy him time. He pulled out of the spiral with barely 50 feet to spare. The hangar erupted in cheers when he landed, but I couldn't move. I was still frozen, staring at the telemetry readout like I could will it back to normal. That night, he found me sitting alone in the empty simulation bay. "You saved me," he said quietly.
No, y whispered.
"I almost got you killed." He stepped closer, the scent of jet fuel still clinging to him. "Elliot, look at me." I did, and found his gaze softer than I had ever seen it. "I've been in worse scrapes, but today I trusted you. More than anyone." There was something in his voice, something that made my pulse quicken. And before I could think better of it, I asked, "Why? Why me?" His smile was faint but real. "Because I've been watching you since you first walked into this place. And I know you think we're from different worlds. But I don't care about that." For the first time, the air between us felt electric, charged with something we'd both been avoiding. He didn't touch Menet yet, but the closeness was enough to send my thoughts spiraling. The next day, whispers started spreading. People saw Adrian defending me in front of the brass after the simulation failure. They said it wasn't like him to get involved in politics, that he was risking his standing. But when I confronted him about it, he just shrugged. "I told you," he said, "I don't care what they think." But I did care. Because the truth was, I was falling for him, and in the rigid world of the Academy, an Alpha pilot and an Omega researcher didn't get happy endings. And then came the news that changed everything. Adrian had been selected for a classified mission overseas, dangerous, unpredictable, and possibly one way. He didn't tell me himself. I overheard it in the faculty lounge. That night, when I found him alone in the hangar, he didn't deny it. "I didn't want to drag you into this," he said, "but I'm leaving at the end of the week." The words hit harder than any turbulence. My throat tightened, my voice breaking. "So you were just going to disappear?" He stepped forward, his hand finally brushing Minea, fleeting, fragile contact that carried more weight than any embrace. "No," he said softly. "I was going to ask you to wait for me." I didn't answer him right away. My heart was pounding, and my mind was torn between fear and something dangerously close to hope. Waiting for someone like Adrian Blake wasn't just a matter of time, it was about trusting he'd come back from a mission no one could guarantee. "Adrian," I said, my voice shaking, "you can't ask me to promise something like that unless you promise me you'll fight to come back." He smiled faintly, that infuriatingly calm alpha smile. "I don't know how to lose, Elliot." And just like that, he was gone. The week after his departure was a blur. My days were filled with research and upgrades to the simulator, anything to keep my mind from spiraling. But every night, the same image returned. His silhouette against the hangar lights, his voice saying my name. I clung to it like a lifeline. Then the reports started coming in. The mission was tougher than expected. There had been skirmishes. Communications were spotty. And then nothing. For almost a month, there was nothing. I'd stopped sleeping, stopped eating properly. The world shrank to a single point of dread in my chest. People told me to let it go, to prepare for the worst. But I couldn't. It was late one evening, as I sat alone in the simulation bay, that I heard footsteps. I didn't look up at first, I didn't dare. But then I heard it. "Mason." I froze. That voice. I turned so fast my chair almost tipped. Adrian was standing there, battered, still in partial gear, a smear of dirt across his cheek but alive. His eyes found mine immediately, and all the air left my lungs. I was on my feet before I realized it, crossing the space between us in 3 unsteady steps. My hands grabbed his jacket like I needed to make sure he was real. "You're home," he finished for me. His voice was rough, like the word was something he'd been carrying for miles. For a moment, neither of us moved. And then, without thinking, I wrapped my arms around him. He held me like he'd been waiting for this as long as I had, one hand in my hair, the other firm against my back. "I told you I'd come back," he murmured into my ear. "You scared the hell out of me." I whispered, my voice breaking. "I know." He leaned back just enough to look at me, his eyes soft in a way I'd only seen in stolen moments. "But I had to come back. For you." In the days that followed, there were debriefings, formalities, and questions neither of us wanted to answer. But the nights were ours. We'd walk the quiet paths near the academy, the air cool and still, our hands brushing until they finally stayed clasped. There was no need for grand declarations. Every look, every touch carried all the words we hadn't said. One evening, we found ourselves back in the hangar where it had all started. The fighter jet gleamed under the floodlights, but my attention was fixed entirely on him. "Elliot," Adrian said, stepping closer until there was barely an inch between us. "I'm not going anywhere this time. I've had enough of watching you from a distance." I felt my breath catch. "Then stop watching," I whispered. "Stay." His hand came up to cup my jaw, his thumb brushing my cheek. The kiss was slow, certain, the kind that made the rest of the world fade away. For the first time, I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, an alpha pilot and an omega researcher could have a happy ending. And as his arms wrapped around me under the quiet hum of the hangar lights, I realized I'd been wrong about one thing. We weren't from different worlds. We were just 2 people who had finally found the courage to meet in the same one. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.